Okay, sleuthers, I'm sure you enjoy listening to Dylan Neal talk about, what it's like to be an actor, more about just the industry as a whole and giving, pulling back that curtain, not just pulling it back, but ripping it back and really letting us know what's going on behind the scenes in the entertainment industry, especially the Hallmark entertainment industry. But we've been trying to get there, and we're finally there now. In this episode, we are going to be breaking down all 5 episodes of Gourmet Detective, and Dylan's going to be giving us some, insights and, what it took to make those episodes, what he liked about it, what maybe he didn't, enjoy as much. But sit back, enjoy part 2 of our conversation with Dylan Neal.
This podcast was created by fans for fans and is not affiliated with or sponsored by Hallmark or the Hallmark channel.
Well, let's talk about that pilot.
Maturity.
You said, you're the executive producer, so you had to assemble the cast, and you had, Ali Scobie, you had Samantha Ferris, Matthew Alexander, Mark Sr. for, all that core group of characters. So how, and then obviously Brooke, but how did you assemble them? Like, what were you thinking when you're putting all that cast together?
That was normal casting where you don't know what you're going to get. You start with Maggie, and I told you, the network was involved in that, and that they gave me 10 names, and I kept trying to push my name. It was Sheila Horsdal. And they said, yeah, we love Sheila, but we're not going to give this to her. So pick again. And then I eventually, because I didn't know Brooke and some of the other names, I thought there was going to be a power battle, or they were going to be, they just weren't going to be believable with a gun or any. And it was nothing against them personally. Like, I'm friends with some of those, with a lot of those names. But I just felt once I really looked into everybody, I thought Brooke had the best shot of sort of doing what we were hoping to do. And then so you go into casting and pre-production, and it's like a regular casting session where all the local actors that are not going to be coming up from LA, which is for a Hallmark movie, everybody, it's all local actors because they're saving money. Unfortunately, Canadian actors, they don't get paid the same, and they don't get residuals. Little secret there. So when Matt Anderson came in, Matt's got a great personality. He's a very lively, memorable person, and I love casting because I'm an actor, and so I know what these guys are going through. I want to give them as much info and make them feel at home as much as possible, and so I hope people can like auditioning with me. And so we just had him play around a little bit. And it's like, okay, I don't know who you're going to be, Bailey or Monroe, but you're definitely in the running for one of these guys. And we kept him back, and I think we did some chemistry tests. And so I think we eventually ended up with Mark and Matt playing a scene, and they just both played off each other really well. And it was like, okay, yeah, Tweedledee, Tweedledum, you guys are in. Perfect, thank you. And then Sam, if I remember, Sam came in and read for the coroner. And she just came in, and as we always tease Sam, or it's her own line, I think, she's like large and in charge. Whenever she's in the room, Sam's large and in charge. Totally. And she came in, did a great job of the coroner, but we all looked and went, oh, crap. I think we just found our police chief, because she just takes charge. And we had envisioned perhaps maybe like an African-American woman for that role. And so it kind of swapped with the actress who became the coroner. But it was Sam who just came in and took over the room and went, okay, well, there's our police chief, Forsyth. And she's just always been so great. I know you guys are fans of her, and she's terrific.
Awesome.
And I love working with Sam, and man, I miss those guys. We had so much fun on those shows, and that's one of the things that I'm most proud of. Like, you talk about the Gourmet, it's not the final product. It's the atmosphere that we created, everybody, on that show. And Brooke's a big part of that too, and myself and the directors, they got on board, because I told you I have a no asshole policy. I will not have prima donnas on my sets, and you usually get pretty good heads up beforehand, so I'm not caught by surprise. But I've heard through the grapevine from other people who said, man, you know what was a great project that I've worked on? It was the Gourmet movie. And that's like the biggest compliment to me of all of this stuff, that people just took away really great memories, because it's a Hallmark movie. At the end of the day, everyone's just trying to it's just a paycheck. You know what I mean? No one's like dying to do a Hallmark movie. I mean, and that's the sad truth. I mean, it's just work, right? And Hallmark's one of the biggest employers in Canada. Like they make 200 or 100 movies, right? They're almost all in Canada. That makes them one of Canada's largest entertainment employers. Vancouver, Toronto actors need Hallmark product to come through just to help pay bills. So, that's why they do it. They're not, as day players, guest stars, super excited. The material is not as though it's going on the reel necessarily. It's not going to get you recognition anywhere, but it helps pay bills. And so you're thankful for the job. So when you can have someone say after, oh man, I mean, that was just a Hallmark movie, but those are a fun group of people. And I'm really glad I did that. That's the most you can hope for.
What you also had in here, Kimberly Sustad. And I'll get into it. I'll do some name dropping because you had
Chris
so many
McNally.
of these actors at the very beginning of their Hallmark careers, and she is one of them. And just so you know, while Brooke is my all-time leading Hallmark crush, because Brooke's retired, it's Kimberly now. And so you had both of them in that same one. But Kimberly's...
Hey, Brooke's not retired, by the way. Well, Hallmark just stopped hiring us.
Well, we'll get to it.
That's the truth.
We'll get to her career in a second, but but Kimberly's character in there was just, Sally was fantastic. She nailed it.
Yeah.
And but her look too, with that like hair, like she was one of my favorite characters, regardless that it was Kimberly, of all five there. So when first, you cast her, and first of all, like, did you have a say in how she was going to look? And then secondly, did you see that she was going to be the Kimberly Sustad that we all know today, which is just powerhouse?
Yeah, and I got to tell you, because I don't really watch Hallmark, I know Kimberly works. I've seen her name places. I've never seen anything she's done. I don't know any of the material. And I think she may have done one thing before us, if memory serves. But I seem to remember.
I don't know because of production if she was in it before or after. It came out the same year.
Yeah, I seem to remember like almost being a little apologetic with Kimberly in that I think it was a bit of a hassle. Something else was going on in her life. And it was, again, I mean, I don't want to sound disparaging, right? But most people are not super excited to be working on a Hallmark movie as day players. It's just, I'm thankful for the job. Let's go. Let's do this. I got to go. And so I can't remember what it was, but I almost feel like apologizing to him. Like, I know, I'm sorry. But you're doing so great, and thank you. And I don't remember, and I may have that completely wrong in my mind. But no, I can't say so I don't know really, other than I know she's been working at Hallmark, and from what you say, she's doing really well. And I'm just really glad. It was clear she was an accomplished actor. She knew what she was doing. As the exec producer, yes, I sign off on all the clothing choices, but on my movies, I do not, in most cases, get too involved in costuming, and especially with women. I don't believe that I'm going to be the be-all and end-all choice on women's clothing. I give guidance. We have department meetings for all the departments, right, early on through development. So I'm having discussions with our head costume designer about each character, what I'm thinking. And then I just kind of hand it off. And then they will give me, I'm thinking this, I'm thinking that. And I go, yeah. Or if I've said, hey, but I really do want this outfit or this idea for that scene, they'll run it by me. And then I get the photos. But the network weighs in. Network weighs in heavy on costuming, and especially with the lead actors. So they overrule me. If I get my knickers in a knot, I'll bring something up. Because it's weird. So here's another thing I've seen. I was never allowed to have leather jackets. Couldn't happen. And then yet, Flower Shop Mystery or something else, I see Brendan wearing leather jackets everywhere. And I go, what? Why? Again, right? Like, why am I told these things I can't have? And then I go, look over there. I feel like a little kid going, Mom, look. Like it constantly, I would see things that I'm told I can't do. And then you start to realize, oh, you know what? I have an executive who just has their own vibe of this is what they want or don't want. And I would have to make myself really difficult I can't overrule them, but to get my way. And so you have to kind of pick your battles because you're not going to get all of them, right? You got to pick what's really important and go hard on that. That's always going to be script, number one, because they ruin a lot of gourmets over script choices. Who cares about clothing? I'll let some of those go, right? I'll fight hard on script. I will fight hard on casting. I'll dig in on casting until I know I can't win anymore. And I've won a couple of those. So you got to pick and choose your battles. But yeah, yeah, leather coats. Yeah. Oh, there's so many things that they won't.
What's funny is
you can't get an actress's face dirty either. You can't have too much flour on a face. So if you're doing like a little food fight thing, as long as she doesn't get anything on her, it's like, does it matter? Like, isn't that the cute bit? Isn't that the fun bit when you like wipe something off somebody's face and you know? No, can't be dirty.
That's
Which
hilarious.
we'll get to the hay bale in GD4 later.
Yeah. Well, what was your favorite part of the pilot?
Of like a scene or filming or any
Yeah, or
context?
just either the scene, the experience, just like when you look back at it, what's the one thing that makes you smile about that episode?
I don't know. I don't know if anything does, honestly. That sounds horrible, doesn't it? Um, I think seeing the police station in different tracking shots, and I think we shot in a little atmosphere in that first one. Atmosphere is when you put in a little bit of smoke from smoke machines and you let it settle, and it gives a 35 millimeter depth
Yeah.
to a scene. So it's called atmosphere. And we often would set the fire detectors off in that building with our atmosphere a little too hot. Thank God no sprinklers went off. I've been on set when we set off sprinklers before in other projects. That's not good. But when the sirens go off, the fire trucks have to show up, and it means you're shut down for like 45 minutes. And we don't have on these little tight union movies 45 minutes to shut down. And we did set off, and it was like, oh my God, it was at the end of the day. I was so panicked because it's law. Like, we can't get around it. It's law. They cannot go off until the fire trucks show up. They have to investigate the whole building. They have to talk to the location manager that you have who's in contact with the owner of the building. And then the chief supervisor, the police chief supervisor, then gives the sound or, the go ahead, turn off the alarm, and we're going to leave. So you're immediately shut down. And that's just so scary when you don't have time like that. So I guess the takeaway is Brooke and I obviously got to be really good friends. We could see our relationship, like our banter
Right.
was fun. And if we got to do more, well, we were supposed to do 3 right away. We'll figure this out. We'll make it better, and it'll be good. So I guess that's my takeaway. Is like I got a good buddy,
I
and Matt and everybody. Like I've become really good friends with Matt Anderson too.
I know
And
this.
Sam, like, I don't see Sam as much, but yeah, that cast. I really cared about the cast.
I know this one may be a little triggering, but I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask for each one. But what was the one? I know you probably have a list, but what was the one big frustration challenge that came out of this particular one? Like you said, you had to make compromises throughout all the entire series. But for the pilot, what was the one that just to this day, just oh, man,
Oh, I think maybe just from the very beginning of who Henry was going to be, and then finding that Bill wouldn't let me do anything. So, I told you I think I was going to borrow from different characters. So he was going to have a little bit of the savantness of like Benedict Cumberbatch in Sherlock, right? He was going to see things, and he was going to connect the dots, and he was going to be kind of a little more out there, right? And we only lightly touched on it in that cooking class scene where it says, hey, you and your thing, and you over there, and you over there, right? That was the most the network would kind of let us do, but it was going to be more, and I was going to have like visual effects a little bit, and then not being able to literally say the name Picasso. Bill would not let me say the name Picasso because I would somehow that would horrify his audience. They got pearl clutching of like, oh my God, that's a highbrow elitist artist or something, isn't it? Like he had such this crazy perception of who his audience is. I could not understand him. And so I wasn't allowed to say a fancy bottle of wine. I couldn't name a fancy dish. Maybe I was able to eventually sneak some of this in, right? I couldn't name Picasso, just like a simple, like Henry couldn't like cricket. He couldn't listen to classical music. I go on, right? He was supposed to be a mosh of Fraser Crane and Monk and Sherlock and put it all in a big soup and then me to do whatever I can do with that, right? And at every turn said, no, 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 no. And then I'm just like, well, why did you buy this? What can I do? When you bought essentially a character who's Frasier, like that's probably the closest character and one of the most beloved characters in all of TV history, not because of Kelsey and what he did, but brilliant writing, and not that my writing or my interpretation would be anything like Kelsey, but like my little baby version of it. So it was so disheartening, and that's when it started to drop into place. Oh crap, this place is nothing like what I thought we could do. And this was coinciding with another movie that we had sold, a rom-com, which completely went off the rails story-wise. Even after they the outline, which was very detailed, and then Bill came in, we can't do that, we can't. He took the inciting incident out. The movie was called Disorderly Conduct because your two leads, the two girls, get arrested for disorderly conduct in a barroom brawl, which was like a Disney barroom brawl, like barroom brawl, right? He buys it, the outline, everything, it's in there. And we start writing, by the way, we can't have a barroom brawl. Like, what? How am I supposed to write a movie called Disorderly Conduct about being arrested and you've just taken it away? What? Can't do it. And so you felt as a writer, you were in like an episode of Twilight Zone, where we come from the normal land of Hollywood, which is already difficult enough. Like the normal culture in Hollywood is showrunners and writers, we bitch about network executives and development, and they bitch about us. That's the ecosystem. Both sides have to kind of figure out a way to get along, but the writers want to deliver what they've been paid to deliver. The network executives have to protect their brand. They have to protect all the things that they have to protect about. But the problem is there is a position called development executive. And if he doesn't give notes, he can't kind of justify his job. And so an old conundrum for all writers, everyone will talk about this in union level writers, is we know we're getting notes sometimes just so that they can give notes to justify their job, even when no notes are needed. Like when you have like a Dick Wolf or you have big TV giants, they get notes. Now, Dick Wolf has told junior development execs to go F off, literally, because he's not going to get fired and they can't tell him what to do, but they still give notes. And then Dick kind of chooses what to actually take or not take. But for everyone else and others much, much lower on the totem pole, we have to take those notes. And sometimes they can be helpful. I would say at Hallmark, and I'm being generous, I'll give them maybe 20% could be construed as useful because of X, Y, and Z. You say, oh, that's a good point. Or I hadn't noticed I had done that. And thank you for bringing that to my attention. That's actually helpful. But when it came to actual dialogue, and they would get down to literally word by word of what you can and cannot say. When Becky and I would tell our friends working in prime time, and we're at dinner and we're all just bitching about the industry and our bosses and development, right? And we listen to them and they're bemoaning all of their notes and like, rah, rah, rah. And Beck and I would look at ourselves like, oh, really? And then we would proceed to tell them what our notes, which are pages and pages and pages. And there's this silence as they look at us and they go, I can't even comprehend what you're saying. What? They can't even comprehend the level of overhandedness and dumbness that came through the notes at Hallmark. And I say, yeah, that's what it's like working there. And again, this is coming from Becky, who won the Warner Brothers writing program, the most vaunted writing program in all of Hollywood. Like thousands of people apply every year. They take like 17. Becky not only got to be 17, like her project was chosen as the winner of her year to represent the class. Like she's a thoroughbred writer. She was immediately hired and had her own trajectory and left the business for a number of reasons for a long time. But she knows TV writing. And when you have a development exec who's never been anywhere except at Hallmark and who tutored under Bill, are you kidding me? I mean, are you kidding? So, to her credit, she was always very professional, very mature, and I was the one going apoplectic and just like pulling my hair out and just wanting to just jump out a window.
All right.
What was your question?
The thing that frustrated you. So moving on to A Healthy Place to Die. When we talked last time, you said that was supposed to be the third movie.
Yeah, that was supposed to be the third.
What happened to the second one?
Second one never got made. That was called Spiced to Death, and Bill put a fork in that one. So I think I mentioned the first three were hired all at once. I was still on Cedar Cove, so I just was doing a million things all at once, breaking down all the movies, starting the outlines. And so we had to hand off, Becky and I, number 2 and number 3, to 2 other writers who I believe had worked at Hallmark before. At least one of them had. But they had the first script of ours to try and see the tone and where we're going and who these characters are. But I don't know if they'd ever written murder mysteries, and they struggled with the tone a little bit, I think, with Henry and Maggie. But I think it was really the murder mysteries for the second one. And the third one, I'm just too hesitant to say why Bill didn't want to do it, because I may not be right, and it sounds bad, but he didn't want to do it. I'm crazy, but I'm not that crazy. So, he was not interested in doing it maybe ever, or certainly not at that time. And so we didn't have another one ready to go, and we had to go fix what was then the third one, A Healthy Place to Die, and bring that up because they were ready to keep going, right? There was a machinery in place. We had delivered Gourmet 1 in December of 2014. I think they wanted to go into production on the second one, February or March, right? So it was all hands on deck for number 2. And then that's where I was really struggling to find it myself because, again, these books are not usable. Almost like you can use a kernel of the story maybe, and then you have to make everything else up. So I'm having to just make up a whole new murder mystery on the fly. And then with no money, and then site specific, knowing where you're going. Okay, what can I use? What can't I use? And so you're just kind of on the fly, right? And so, you do your best you can. But I felt I was really, really under pressure trying to deliver number 2 on time. It was not fun at all. Yeah, I completely kind of like rewrote a whole script in about 10 days. It's ludicrous.
To keep our theme going, though, of fresh faces, you had Crystal Lowe in this, who had been a little bit, she just, I think, a year before started the Signed, Sealed, Delivered, but which is another Muse production. Did Joel bring her over to say, hey, we love Crystal, what about her? Or do you remember how Crystal ended up?
I'm not totally remembering. It could very well have been Joel saying, hey, what do you think about Crystal, who I would have met at functions and thought was terrific. And same with Eric Mavius, great. That was a really great group on Signed, Sealed, Delivered. Hey, you know what? I would say Signed, Sealed, Delivered is the best thing at that time Hallmark had done. Production wise, and Martha Williamson, who was running that, she's such a good fit for Hallmark, but Bill made it very difficult for her too. And this is Martha Williamson, like, give me a freaking break. And the stories I heard of some things that oh my God, that guy is insane. But, they had really good production design, and it was a good premise for Hallmark, the Lost Letters Society. That's right up Hallmark's alley, and the way that Cedar Cove was a really good fit and should never have been screwed up. The Postables or whatever, that was a good premise. And I think probably those ultimately just got too expensive for them. I never really got into big detail with Joel about them. And they did obviously a lot of them, and they were very well loved. And that's a really fierce, loyal fan club, and rightly so. And, they had a really good, long burning love interest in there going on. And, I think they did a really great job. They did a great job. And that initial director, I believe, was Scott Smith, who did our first Gourmet Detective. It was all part of Muse and Joel and our little mafia inside Hallmark. We were sort of our own little ragtag team. Joel is a very important producer for Hallmark, and that's why we reached out to Joel. And actually, I'd never mentioned this long, crazy story. Is Becky's very, very first job in Hollywood outside of college was working for Joel when he had a production company at NBC as his assistant. And
All right.
not a job anybody wants. You'd never want to be Joel's assistant. He would be the first person to say that. I say that with love. But so it was funny, like literally 15, maybe more years later, as a producer, we reach out to Joel and say, hey, let's join forces on some of these. And so that was kind of a funny full circle moment.
Well, you also had Brendan Penny in this. So one of the interesting things that after binging them all literally in a row, you realize you saw a lot of these Hallmarks who go on to become stars very early in their career, whether it be their first or second there. Now, was this like, and you don't see that in the other mysteries, which is kind of interesting.
Well, Brendan, I've known for a long time. We have the same agent. We're at the same agency in Vancouver, and Brendan is such a great guy. Like, I think that just radiates off the screen with Brendan, right? Like, I just love him, and he's a good actor. He's hilarious, but he can also do drama, and he's a really handsome guy. He's just the full package, right? And wasn't he on Cedar Cove for a little bit as well? I can't remember, but I mean, he's no like Brendan. Brendan is a perfect person for Hallmark. He works outside of Hallmark as well. There's no surprise that he's done very well there. And I can't say enough wonderful things about Brendan,
No, but I'm just trying to figure out if it's coincidence or just kind of this eye you had about how, like I say, because the other mysteries, they all had like these secondary characters, because you wouldn't think of it being a springboard, right? But so many of them have gone on to be leads, which you don't see a lot in these secondaries.
Maybe what happens there is, so I'm an actor first, right? And so when Becky and I were writing, I think we're pretty good at our jobs. I mean, Becky's very good. I make her coffee. That's what I do. And so when it comes to casting, and hopefully we've created some interesting characters that we've somehow gotten through development, because as I've said, they won't ever let us do anything interesting with the side characters. Like Bailey and Monroe were supposed to have their own lives, and my assistant Lucy Lucy and Monroe were supposed to have a relationship slow building, and they wouldn't let us do any of that, which is so short-sighted. That's such bad development. You're supposed to have a fleshed out world. You're supposed to have fleshed out secondary characters. It's not just about your freaking two lead. That's boring. That's boring and wrong storytelling. Anyways, so we wasn't allowed to do it. But we still tried. Still like, banging your head against the wall. And so when it came to casting, because I'm an actor, I know who all the good actors are up in Canada. So I'm immediately thinking of people before we get there. So I'm calling casting and I'm saying, hey, make sure we get so-and-so in the room, okay? Or even in a rare instance, let's just offer it right away. We're not even going to have to bother casting. And I'll get network permission, and I'll bend an arm to make that happen. And so when it comes to casting, I think it just helps when you've got a veteran actor who knows the lay of the land, and he knows some of these people, and then makes it a good environment for casting, and then a good environment on set. If you make actors relaxed, they're going to want to do good work for you. If you make it miserable, well, who wants to do their best work, right? So I'm not putting on an act just to get something out of them. I genuinely want to have a good time, but I also know the benefit of that is you get the best of people. It's not rocket science, right? Let's have a good time. And so when you make it, and I guarantee you, you have to ask, okay, you and Andrea, every time you have someone on, if they've been on a gourmet, ask them, was that one of your more fun experiences? I'll be shocked if most don't say, oh yeah, that was actually a pretty good shoot. Before I've been broke, before I was a broken man by number 5. So start with some of the earlier ones.
This one had, I think, my absolute favorite ending of any mystery, not just gourmets, any mystery, the frying pan.
Oh, I love that bit. Thank you.
I loved it.
Yeah. Not in the book, of course. I just made that up. And I tried to reverse engineer. I actually looked up the science behind the carbon fiber and all of that stuff. It probably would not have stopped a higher caliber bullet, but it was a little bit of a gray area. It was like, oh, it's believable enough that that could actually happen, right? So I was so thrilled to find that. And then when we pulled it off, it just felt like, oh, that is kind of cute. Like, it's funny, right? And that was supposed to be more of the Henry that we would see.
Right.
And that guy went away. Yeah, I'm glad you liked that because I made myself laugh with that. I thought that was cute.
It's funny, and we can talk about continuing, but it seemed like in each movie you did get at least a scene where you did get that Henry you're talking about, and it's funny
Yeah,
because since we talked, Andrea and I, as we watch it now, specifically, it's
you're looking for
more
it.
attuned, right? And we go, there
Yeah,
he is, right? So you
yeah,
can
yeah.
see where you had the wins.
Yeah,
So they
exactly.
may
And
not have
sometimes
been
you just sneak
always,
stuff in,
but
right? Like anything in life, ask for forgiveness, don't ask for permission because you're not going to get it. So sometimes we just do stuff and like, what are you going to do? Are you really going to edit it out? Because actually, I didn't give you any other footage. So sorry. There's lots of little tricks that, you can do in production if you've got the support of the director and you're the exec producer. And, it's like, sorry, I didn't shoot anything else. You're going to wreck the movie? No, you're going to put it in. Sorry. To a point, right? Because if you do that,
right.
then they're not going to trust you anymore, and maybe you don't get another shot at bat. But you try to. There's ways to get what you want.
Well, we talked about how this one got thrust into the second position where it wasn't naturally a fit. But
Yeah, yeah, going
and
away.
that may be the answer. But what for this one would you say? What was like the challenging thing really that stuck out for this particular one, getting this one made?
I think the challenging was being in one location and hopefully not feeling claustrophobic and boring.
Is that
We're
like
just in a
budget?
hotel. It was I that one. The budget cuts had not come in. That was three and
Okay.
four where we were given less money. Number two, I think, was a full budget, but the premise, because it was from the book and it was supposed to be number three, as we're writing it and then shooting it, anytime you do, as I mentioned last time, a Cabin in the Woods episode, the trick is to not bore your audience because you can't go off and give them eye candy to distract them. You're kind of stuck. So I think that was my only concern. Also, I think I was worried that the villain was going to be obvious. Um, and I think I was using the constructs of the book there a little bit. And I think I remember being a little worried. Yeah, this might be telegraphing, and I don't know how to get around this one. That's sort of in my memory. I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Well, that brings us into perfectly rolling into Death al dente, which I I like this one a
Oh,
lot.
hold on, Eric. Before we move on, I just have to say, so the most positive thing, though, about number two was that we were all in an empty hotel on Vancouver Island, and it was party central that entire movie. So the crew and the cast are staying on all the floors of this hotel, and it was like we were all in college, and it was a kegger every night. I mean, it
Awesome.
was it was ridiculous. And without giving too much away, like being inappropriate, but at nighttime, all you would hear in the hallway is like door slam, door slam, door slam, door slam. Everybody's, doing their thing in the middle of the night all night long. And the photos we have from that time, and we used to have these hallway parties. So at the end of the day, everyone would congregate outside mine and Brooke's door, and we'd just sit in the hallway with our drinks and food and just hang out, all of us, crew and cast. That never happens. Never happens. And I could give you a photo. I'll share a photo with you or two of those. And you can just see, oh, God, these guys are having a fun time. And in fact, we actually got in trouble because that's where I have to sometimes, where I got that balance of being an executive producer and then being a moronic actor. Someone's got to be an adult. And I did piss off our production manager on that towards the end. And and Brooke may have had a little too much to drink on our wrap party at the end.
Well, without
Enough
getting too
said.
detailed into that,
Yeah,
how about Brooke? So
so it was fun.
Brooke seems like she can be a fun. Not she doesn't seem very Maggie like in real life. So
No, No.
She seems like
Well,
she's
with her own kids, like she's a fierce protective mama. So yeah,
okay.
she's full on mama, and she's got a number of kids, and so she could be Maggie that. But yeah, she certainly, and that was before her latest daughter was born, even. So it was before Declan was around. So that was sort of maybe like her last hurrah before
But there,
before motherhood came around again.
well, this was actually ironically the one where when they were driving in, Henry was sort of kind of saying she was boring, uptight, and she's like, "What? Like I do
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Cyndi Lauper cover and everything like that." So,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
I love, like I said, this one had really good banter. Well, they all had really good banter, but it had strong banter in that copy.
Oh, good, good.
All right, so Death Al Dente.
Yeah.
I like this one a lot. Andrea found it a bit slow, and I know this is where you said you started getting your challenges with it. So
Yeah.
can you like take through what happened from, you went to your second one, things are
So
challenging but
yeah,
rolling, and now we roll into three.
so from we just got off on the wrong foot from day one, especially with Bill. So Bill was excited about the project at the beginning. I think he liked me still at that point. And then when he saw what he'd actually bought, I don't think he liked it. I don't think he liked Henry. He didn't understand Henry. Michelle Vickery loved it. In fact, everybody at the network loved it. All of the old school people always said the Gourmets were the best written movies they'd ever had. And they understood what we were trying to do, and they understood, but it's not Bill. And he's the one who says everything. And then the problem we had was when the first one aired, the premiere, it was literally, I think, in a football playoff snowstorm. I think there was a presidential debate, and there might have actually been a hurricane. We got decimated on the numbers the opening night because of what was going on. It's just super bad luck. And Bill's a numbers guy like anybody at the network, and so they panicked. And they went, oh, crap, okay, we made the wrong call. We can't be focused on the Gourmet Detective. This is a woman's network. We have to focus on Maggie. That was a mistake. So I was told, every movie forward, you have to give twice as many lines to Brooke. I literally wrote twice as many lines for Maggie as my character in the second one. I literally counted them. I was just told. And so it changed. So again, I'm getting further and further away from the Castle premise where it's called the Gourmet Detective or Castle for a reason, right? That character is supposed to be, I mean, it is a two-hander project. It's always the two of them, but it's called that reason because he brings something special. And as annoying as he is, he's indispensable to solving the case. And so it means he does actually have to discover clues. He has to have at least one of the two eureka moments, right? Maggie can have one, he can have one or two, whatever it is. They took that all away. And so then I'm like, well, what is the point of Henry? I can't really discover too much. I can't push the plotting because they're telling me it's got to be Maggie, it's got to be Brooke the whole time. I'm like, okay, all right, I don't know what to do. I'll try. And so by the time we're at the third, so the second one, the reason we got the second one, I think the second one had to happen because they contractually had bought three from Muse, and they had made all of these pre-sales over in Europe, which is the only reason we got the third one, I think I mentioned, right? First two came up pretty quick. Second one improved, or maybe the second one had some kind of problem with it. Again, bad premiere night with something else going on. So the third one, the only reason we were given it is Muse had pre-sold it to Europe, and they slashed our budget. And they said, if the only way we're going to give it to you is if we give you less money. And I'll tell you, it is so hard to make a Hallmark movie to begin with, even their full budgets. And so I told you the story of how they mandate that you do not shoot less than 15 days. Well, we couldn't afford to shoot 15 days, so we cooked the books. We had two sets of books. We had one that we showed them, our shooting schedule, which is bogus. And then we had the real one, which was 13 days. We shot that movie in 13 days. Super hard. Most film directors, they can't even comprehend shooting a movie in 15 days. Like, what do you mean? I mean, it's like a high school production, 15 days. Like even independent movies shoot like 21 days, right? And we're doing it union, mostly, sort of a gray area when you're shooting in BC. But to try and shoot union with all of that money that goes to higher paying wages to crew and everybody deservedly, but it's all gone. So it's so hard. And then when you're given less, it's like, oh my God, what can you do with the script, right? So I always felt that script is a little weaker. I didn't even hand it in for consideration at the Writing Guild Awards, which, by the way, right, like Gourmet is the only award-winning murder mystery Hallmark. I don't know, maybe someone since then has.
I don't believe so.
And we were nominated for the first one, but we were up against this huge Pulitzer Prize-winning novel. Like there was no way that this little Hallmark movie should even be in the same conversation, and yet we were nominated. So that was funny. But yeah, third one, it was just a little weaker. I felt, even though I'm glad that you guys say that you really liked it, and I was really sick in that one, and so I was just, everyone was panicked. I was going to make Brooke really sick, and and that guy that you guys really liked, the boyfriend, the ex-boyfriend, that's number 3, right? There was not good chemistry between Brooke and that guy, and he's a lovely guy, but he could tell it wasn't totally working either, at least how it felt on set. And so he felt sort of like on the outside a little bit. And there was some casting problem with how that all fell together. And I don't remember the details. So I think we were a little worried that tonally and character-wise, chemistry-wise, we're not firing on all cylinders there. But you guys seem to like it, so maybe it was okay.
Well, we thought it set up a really well. I liked it more than Andrea. Andrea, like I say, she it was, I think, her least favorite of the series.
Yeah.
The part of the reason why I liked it too is the ending was there, but the boyfriend was such an antagonist to bring, like, shed everything away, right, and bring those two together.
It's a really important role, and I think it's a great idea to have the ex-boyfriend, right? Because we're trying to ratchet up the slow burn of the relationship.
Right.
No better way than bringing jealousy into it. And so it's a perfectly natural progression of the relationship, and I think everything was on point. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't think that's in the book at all. I think we just made that up, and it was the right thing to do.
Well, and part of the reason why I like it too is I thought, well, the first kiss when you just, ran out of the house and everything, great. But that second kiss when you're walking down the street and she is just like surprise Henry with it, I thought was just so sweet and wonderful. And
is that at the end of the movie?
Yeah, the very end.
That might be an improvise. That might. No, I think it's in the script. I think it's in the script.
Because that's where, like, I get the last word, and then she's like, smooch, and then walks away. But just the look.
Becky. Yeah, that'd
one
be
thing
Becky.
The Brooke too discovered it because she had it both between the boyfriend and Henry. She is a master of either it's the come hither look or the eyes of steel. Like, she is great with just her looks, but. Moving on.
Yeah, for sure.
So once again, we talk about all these actors who sort of we get introduced to. Matt Hamilton, another guy. Now he may not be like the lead of some of the others, but he's someone who all Hallmark people know. He's Cases of Mystery Lane. He's one of the main characters there. The Three Wise Men and the Baby thing, the huge one there. But the other who you had on here is Aaron Douglas, who. Just what a character actor, right? You look at him and you just know he spent some time in the joint and everything. And just, it had to be just a ton of fun when he walks in the door. It'd be like, that's the guy, right?
Well, that might have been a straight offer to Aaron from me. I'm a little fuzzy. So obviously I knew Aaron. We'd auditioned against each other all the time. He's a really, really good actor, great guy. So I can't remember if he actually had to audition or not, but it was clear it was going to be Aaron. I think he's not the bad guy, right?
Yeah.
Is he?
Yeah. He ends up being the his sister's or the cousin, whatever, the cousin who turns out to be the actual bad guy when she's kind of the bad guy.
Yeah, I can't remember, and I think obviously that's always the discussion. It's like, oh, okay, but if you hire Aaron, then you know you're telegraphing who the bad guy
Well,
is.
that's what we said.
Uh,
Like as soon as he comes on, you're like, oh yeah, he killed somebody.
yeah, right. And
But
that's
it's
the
still
trick with
fun.
any lower budgeted movie. You're gonna as soon as you do any kind like when like the stronger actor, and it's always obvious who the stronger actor is because when a lower budget movies you don't get to pick the same breadth of actors to fill out the cast, and so there's often sometimes some weaker actors, and then you get like, oh well, there's the guy with the 20-year career, you can tell the difference, and then usually then either you recognize that person or you can just tell, and then you're like, oh well, he was cast for a reason, I wonder what that reason is. So you always have to be really careful around casting, right? You don't want to give your villain to a weaker actor to try and double hoodwink your audience, but it's always a challenge to not telegraph obvious. I don't remember the storyline well enough, so it makes sense that Aaron is not the ultimate villain of why maybe we thought we could get away with that, because if he's not exactly, when you see him, he's involved somehow. He's not just there for one scene and going to go away. Always the challenge, and even in a big studio movie, like it's tricky. You got to be careful with your casting.
Well, one of the things we noticed was in the previous, and then it came here as well, where the woman was kind of the bad person who committed the crime, the murder, kind of more
Repeated bad
accidentally.
women.
And then in the second, and then it turned out like the guy was really the bad evil guy. So I was just curious, is this more of like sort of the formula for writing one of the mysteries, or is this kind of a thing where Bill didn't want a woman to be like the evil
I
person?
Because it's been so long, I don't remember any of the stories well. I would say we're in most cases trying to follow some of the thread lines of the books, but I can't tell you for certain whether our ultimate villains were the book's villain or completely our own or a bit of a mosh of both. I don't remember. I know at different times I was worried that something was being repeated, and I don't know if it's what you're talking about right there or something else. And I don't know if my hands were tied a little bit with the books. And sometimes it's a time issue of like, oh, like, do I got to really create something from scratch with no time, or can I just use what Peter King has done a little bit in the book and try and make it work for our purposes? I can't remember, but like I said, I don't hold these up as being the pinnacle of anything, honestly.
For Hallmark Mysteries,
There were so
a
many
lot of us think
challenges.
they are the pinnacle. So I
Yeah,
know you challenged because you knew what it was supposed to be. But the thing I can tell you is they came out of probably a lot better than you feel, just because once again, you know what it could have been. Though
sure,
you shared a lot, so
sure.
now we have more insight. But still,
Yeah.
when you especially look across the board and a lot of the other mysteries, it's right up there. All right, let's go eat, drink, and be buried.
Yeah, that was a really problem. Oh man, so many problems on that one.
Loved the beginning when they show up in costume and lo and behold, costume party canceled, so they're the only one in costume. But you shared that's actually there's a little more to that story than that,
Yeah.
because it is a wonderful, wonderful beginning. Great comedy, but
So that one, it just problem after problem after problem. So again, we're given a reduced budget. I think we were able to shoot that one in 14 days, so we only had to lie about one day. During the writing of that, I had asked Joel and over at production at Muse, hey, can we afford the horses that I'm writing? Can we afford the big costume ball that I'm writing? Can we afford X, Y, and Z? And it was always, yep, we can do that. Yep, we can do that. And so I had written, and Becky, I keep saying Becky and I had written this story that was taking Maggie and Henry further along in their relationship, and it was about horses, because Maggie was going to have been this accomplished equestrian from her youth, loved horses, was comfortable around horses, and it was like, oh, I remember this part of my life. I've missed this. I'm a career woman. I'm a mom, and it's something that a lot of us, as we approach a little bit older in life, is like, oh my gosh, I remember this person who used to have all of these interests, and that's an interesting thing for a single mother, right? It was good, and then it was good for Henry because Henry, of course, would be terrified of horses and doesn't like to feel like he's not in control. And he was terrified of them. And so it was a major thematic storyline within the whole movie. And it was going to start whenever we were at that place. And they were like, oh, there's horses. And we were going to be going for horseback rides together. And there was going to be huge, like big comical things with, Henry like going way off and getting taken, falling off horses and Maggie having to go help him and pretending, oh, I'm fine. I'm totally fine. And we were trying to do funny bits with the horses. And then there was a big action sequence in the final act where Maggie goes on horseback to chase down the bad guy. And, it's not as though we were going to be doing like a big, huge old Western, but by Hallmark standards, it was going to be at least a little more vibrant than what they normally do, like pop up behind the couch. Gotcha! We were trying to do something. And it was going to be a horseback ride. Like, that's cool, right? And I was nervous because I know how expensive Hollywood horses are, right? You don't just do this with normal horses. You have to bring in the professional horses. You have to have the professional riders. It costs a ton of money. I was told no problem. We get into pre-production. We're $750,000 over budget on a $2 million movie. This is no small problem. This is like, holy crap, we're cooked. And so that's when I get really calm and I rolled up my sleeves. And Joel said, you just have to fix this. And so it was me and our production manager and Beck. And I'm in Vancouver now at this point, and I'm back at home saying, okay, here comes some late nights. And meanwhile, I have to carry on with pre-production. I still have to do scouting. I still have to do casting. I still have to do everything else. But I have to rewrite the entire script at the same time in the evenings with Beck. And so all the horse stuff had to basically go. But I still have a story to tell. And so, I don't know if you remember, there's like this big, long walk and talk scene in the middle of nowhere. That's supposed to be on horseback. There's supposed to be a lot of funny stuff going on. And there's no time. So guess what? The horses go and we save like $200,000. And now we're just walking. Yeah. And I don't have time to like come up with a whole big different, because we need to get the information out that's important to keep the thread together. But we're just talking. Oh my God, it's so boring. It's so freaking boring, right? I'm stuck. I have no time. It's the only solution. But then I have to rewrite the entire ending of the movie. And okay, what have I got? I've got a barn. And we're gonna, and so you just work backwards, right? And so to get to your hay bale stupidity, here's another fun little thing that is only at Hallmark. At that time, anyways, turns out you're not allowed to knock out your lead actress. Now, I'm not talking about anything egregious. I'm not going to go smash Brooke over the head with a 2x4 or a hammer, but I needed to have an act out. And what do you normally do in like a Disney movie or in Shakespeare or in like even a silent era movie? You might have your damsel in distress, or she's not a damsel in distress. She's your lead actress. She's your hero. Your hero seems like it's got the bad guy cornered, and you get a conk on the head, or you've tripped and you conk your head, and the bad guy escapes for an act out before you ultimately get him, right? Just normal writing 101. I needed her to get knocked out because I was just running into problems. I'm in a corner and I need the act out and I need a crescendo, and it can't be Henry because I'm told Maggie's got to be the one always like leading the charge. So your rules I'm following, and now you're telling me and so I'd ask, like, what do you mean she can't get knocked out? Like, can we figure out, like, I'm not going to take a hammer. I just need her to like anything. Can you drop something? And she just falls under the weight and she hits her head. And just for a moment, like we go to black for the commercial and her eyes are closed, but you come right back and she's just like, she comes to. I just need like 3 seconds for the guy to like run. I think, no. I'm like, what do you mean no? Like, so let's break this down. What do you think your audience is going to do? So like you got 7-year-old Jimmy and 97-year-old grandma. Are they going to go, oh my God, that's so inappropriate. I'm writing to Hallmark. Like Maggie got hit on the head. She fell, and like, what are you afraid of? Like, I'm genuinely asking, what are you afraid of? Now they can't answer because it's Bill. Bill just has a law. You can't knock your actress out. So then we had to negotiate line by line. Okay, so let me think this through, because I'm at an act out. I need help here. Help me. Miss Executive. This was Lori helping me. Okay, so what if a bale of hay? Can we have two bales of hay? No. Okay, you can't have like a bunch, right? That's too scary. Okay, can I have one bale of hay? So stupid, right? Yes. Okay, great. So she can fall to the ground? Yes. Can she get knocked out a little bit, like just a baby knock on her head on the ground, like lots of straw on the ground? It's not going to be like a nail going through her head. Can I just have her? No. So talk me through this, Lori. How am I going to get my act out? I'm going to have Brooke fall to the ground. Her eyes are open. Why is she not getting up? You figure it out. Okay. Okay. Can I get her to like flutter her eyes a little bit as though she's not knocked out, but she's a little like, and she thinks, well, as long as she doesn't look very hurt and she's just kind of like, like just fluttering her eyes a little, like clearing her head. Okay. It still doesn't give me an act out, right? That's not a proper act out. You need your actor, you need your lead to be knocked out with some dramatic music, dun dun dun, come in on the face, go to commercial, sell some Tide for 3 minutes, come back, and then she groggily, Henry, oh, Maggie, you okay? Like, we've all seen this for like a century, right? This is not inappropriate for family friendly, in my opinion, my humble opinion. So that's why that looks so stupid. Now, I literally had to negotiate her getting one bale of hay, not get knocked out, but somehow be incapacitized enough for the bad guy to get out.
But the funny thing is, they're fighting for it to be the one thing, worrying about offending, and instead they created the thing that's like silly.
Well, you get made fun of. You get made fun of as a bad network making
instead of the.
This is why you get Saturday Night Live making skits about you, because you make a shitty product at times when you have rules like that. I'm sorry. That is so illogical and mind-bendingly dumb. And that was the way it was. I'm sure it's not that way now, but that's what I lived with for 12 years. You can't do normal things. You can't behave like a normal person as a writer telling normal family-friendly story, because I'm not writing for Sesame Street. Am I writing for Sesame Street? Like, I agree. Don't knock out Oscar the Grouch. That's inappropriate. But I have a cop. Like, you don't think any Disney movie would allow a very simple little innocuous conk for a second?
Like Cody Banks getting knocked out be totally fine.
So it's ludicrous. It's like how I don't get a leather jacket, but everyone else does later. I was like the guinea pig for the network to learn, oh yeah, we probably shouldn't do that anymore. Like, I helped them learn from Cedar Cove on how not to do things. And I was like, oh God, the things I could have done. So anyways, in the costume ball, in the first scene, of course, that was supposed to be everybody was supposed to be in costume. Now, that's one of those happy accidents that, frankly, I think it's better that we didn't have everyone in costume, that Henry looks like an idiot forgetting that he got the message that it's no longer a costume.
I agree.
Ball. That's one of those happy accidents that happen all the time in production, where you think you've got a problem and then you realize, oh my God, this is actually better. This is way better. But for another example, that waltz that we did, the dance, I had to pay for that out of my own pocket. Production wouldn't pay for us to get dance lessons. Like, I don't know how to waltz. Brooke was a professional dancer, but I bet she didn't know how to immediately do a waltz. So I paid for dance lessons for a couple of days for us to do that. I stayed at a motel with the crew to save money. I didn't stay with the cast and director in the fancier hotel. I was happily ensconced in a motel in another part of town. I'm always doing whatever it takes to try and make the production better. I'll fly coach if I have to. Union rules are you're supposed to fly business when you're on a SAG contract. But I always do whatever to try and help and save the project. So we somehow made it. We got rid of that $750,000 in 3 weeks, but the script greatly suffered. And I think I told you last time, that was the first time when a director and I looked at each other on the first day with fear, and we didn't know if we could land the plane on time with 14 days, still an ambitious shoot, and not enough money. We're like, well, we're starting and we'll see what happens. And then I think I told you, Bill called me, texted me, first day, first scene, he had notes. We're shooting. I'm shooting the movie. And it's not as though we're a big studio film. We're sure you get to rewrite and have all kinds of shenanigans on big budgeted movies, and you can shut down for a day or a week and make changes. On a Hallmark movie, once the gun goes off, there's no stopping. There's no stopping. We can barely do it if we're running full tilt. You can't call and tell me you have notes when you've had the script for like months. That was ludicrous. So I just told Joel, I said, make that go away. Make that go away. I'm not answering that.
Well, for me, this was, like I said, I loved the beginning. I also loved the interaction between Henry and Maggie, but I thought this was the weakest of the mysteries. Which
I was
like you're saying why, because it was literally
I was
him.
so disappointed. I felt like I was kind of letting people down, and yeah.
But in this one, we got to see, we talked about Chris McNally and Lucy Guest, two, once again, young actors making their mark. So it's just continues that sort of, gourmet detective thing. So Lucy,
I didn't know Chris at all, and I think I mentioned, he came up to me at the end, and he really wanted to make a personal mention of like how thankful and grateful he was for that role. I think it was one of the bigger roles he'd ever had at that point. And I think he was eager to get in at Hallmark, knowing that, hey, they're one of the bigger employers in town, and he's a young actor trying to make a living. So it was a good opportunity for him. And he was very sweet about it. I could tell he was really, really genuine. And he just had some integrity about him that I really responded to. And I just let him know, hey, I'm the one who's thankful. Thank you for doing this, and I'm so happy for his success. And he's gone on. He's obviously one of the insiders now at the network, and good on him.
Well, then, as I said, you also had Lucy Guest, who, yes, she's done her acting, but really where she's catapulted is a director, where she did 3 Hallmark Christmas ones last time, and some of the best ones of the entire year. So she's definitely blossomed. So when she is on set, do you remember her at all? Like, was she inkling to say, hey,
we spent a lot of time, and I think we have mutual friends, and we follow each other on Instagram. She's always like commenting, and I seem to remember her inquiring again, sort of like Nikki DeLoach, like, how are you doing this? What do you do? What can you tell me about how to sell things? How do I get, to a little bit of where you are? I knew she had maybe done a little bit of directing and was definitely going down that path. And so we talked, I think, a little bit about that. Like, I'm always trying to help people with whatever knowledge I have, and how can I help you? What do you need to know? And this is what I know. And let me know if I can help you further. So, I seem to remember her. Like, I do feel sort of at times like the godfather of Hallmark, at a time when it's changed, right? And a lot of people have to be more proactive towards their careers. And if you're capable of writing and producing, then do it, right? You need to look after yourself. And so, I started selling pilots back in 2003. So when I was at Hallmark, I was one of the early guys that was actually doing this, and not just getting the vanity producer title, but I was really rolling up my sleeves and doing it. And for some of the people behind the scenes, they were very curious about, hey, what are you doing and how are you going about that?
Well, I know we talked about the myriad of challenges that this movie presented, but what was something that really, if you look back at it though, like you said, you had the one where you said the group was all together, so that was fun. But what was the one in this that still you look back and say, okay, maybe movie is a little bit of a mess, but this was good?
Oh man, number four. I remember some good nights at a cocktail bar with the cast.
So most of these ones roll after is the bonding and the relationships, huh?
There was a really, really good, and I hope it's still there, cocktail bar in Victoria, and I'm just blanking on its name, and it was right behind the hotel that we regular cast would normally stay at. I'm not staying there, I'm back at the motel. But just kind of going over for drinks and just telling stories, right? Because on some of these, I'm kind of now like the senior guy of like, I'm older than everybody and I've been in the business a long time. And we're all just swapping stories. And we're up in Canada and most of my career has been in LA. And I've got LA stories. And so it's fun when you just have a relaxed night and you just swap your stories. And actors are a funny breed, you know. We're gypsies, we're circus performers, we are all coming from just remarkably different backgrounds and have these remarkable stories of how we ended up in this crazy industry. And so you get really interesting people. And as much as I love to tell a story, I love to just shut up and listen too. And then we all had our Hallmark stories because everyone's a Vancouver actor and Hallmark's the biggest employer in town, and so we all talk about the lunacy that we've all been a part of at different times because everyone's got one. All Hallmark projects have crazy stories behind them because it's Hallmark. it's not just us, you know, it's all of them.
All right. Well, let's rue the day.
Yeah.
In this one, it's the fifth and the final.
Yeah.
The thing, though, that I really liked about this one was twofold. One, the relationship between Maggie and Henry is totally cemented. You are a couple, and it's just really enjoyable seeing, just because there's none of the back and forth. So even though, like, even in Eat, Drink, and Be Buried, they kind of were, but there's so much other going on that it wasn't really coupley, right? Whereas this one, you got the chance to really let that relationship breathe, and it was just wonderful. You know, you had to deal with Abby being away and Brooke struggling with that and Henry being a wonderful support for that. So that was
Yeah.
really great. But then it also, going back to the original, this is the first one that kind of returned back to really an Epicurean
Yeah.
murder, right? It was, you know, the food and stuff. So that was really good too. So even though it was like kind of food adjacent in the others, you really got back to a real Epicurean mystery for this. But so
Oh, and this is the absinthe storyline,
right,
right? Yep.
yep,
Oh my God. So to try and get this through, Bill. So it's all coming back to me now. And I will say that Lori Furnow, who was always the point person on the Gourmets, who now runs their scripted television, Lori was a very good ally. So as much as I bitch about development, Lori always had her hands tied, right? So I'm never really directing my bitching at Lori. She had an impossible mission to deliver notes from He Who Shall Not Be Named. And so this this is from Peter King's book, is about absinthe. Absinthe has an amazingly interesting backstory. That's all true, right? It is a drug, and is highly addictive. And there was a major problem around the world around absinthe, and it was made illegal in the United States. It's a bit of a gray area now. It is for sale, but it has this very complicated history. As you can imagine, probably a no-go from point one, trying to tell a story about a drug on Hallmark. So with Lori's help, we try to navigate a little bit of the truth with maybe just a little bit of fudging the story and how we were going to interweave absinthe as the core of the story. And somehow we managed to get there. I do know Bill said at the very end as he threw up his hands, well, I don't understand the story anyways, but whatever. That was his final note I ever remember. Bill could never understand these stories. Now, granted, they're a little convoluted sometimes. Peter's stories are really bonkers. And sometimes, actually, they don't get solved. I think one of the books, the case actually, when you break it down, and I've really poured over every single detail, one of them does not actually get solved. And even though he thinks it's solved, it's not. I can't remember which one. But anyways, yeah, he left a big hole. So I remember that being a big challenge. And it was complicated, but I like that. I like the history of it. My favorite part of writing is weaving the jigsaw puzzle that is a murder mystery of getting
Right.
from A to Z and making it as twisty turny as you can, but keeping it simple because it is Hallmark, right? We're not doing like very highbrow stuff, but you're trying to keep it just enough that we'll get through the gauntlet of Hallmark. But even in a simple little cozy mystery, it's challenging. It's challenging, and the audience is very familiar with all of this. They're going to guess everything, right? So you're always trying to outsmart the audience a little bit, knowing that you're never going to outsmart everyone. You just can't. It's not complicated enough, but you do your best, right? And so that's my memory. And then it was always good to have Bruce, right, playing my dad. I brought in Bruce specifically back in, I think, 4 was the first
Yeah.
one, was it, with Bruce? I was pissed off that they had cast him as the dad in another murder mystery after he'd already been in number 4. I felt like, hey, he's marked, like he's ours. What are you doing, making him a dad in another one? It's just like that made me like, what are you guys doing as a brand? Why would you have one of your most prominent known actors a dad now in 2 of your franchises when you haven't told me mine's canceled and it's over? What are you doing? I thought that was really unfair. And not only disrespectful to us, but also just bad. That's bad branding. It's not as though there's not a lot of famous people out there. Go get your own other man of a certain age who's got a big name. He's ours. So I thought that was so unfair. But anyways, good to have Bruce back and give him something fun, a couple of fun scenes, and talk about great stories. Bruce has got so many great stories. Oh my God, right? Because he came up in just the last stages of the old school Hollywood, and his stories of making Westerns and the people he's worked with, and back in the day of like in the 70s and 80s when Hollywood was a different animal, and for better or worse, and the stories are crazy. Things you could never get away with now. And
Right.
Bruce used to take his kids. We live in the same town, out in Agora, sort of out in the outskirts of LA County. He used to take his kids to school on horseback in LA. Like that's what it was like being out North Malibu. Like how cool is that? So, anyways, I'm off track. Number five. I thought it was a cute script, and that's the one that we won the best screenwriting award for. And I thought that was cute. There's always problems, but as you say, we were trying to get that relationship now kind of cemented. You can't be cute anymore. The only reason we got number 5 is because Michelle Vickery so loved ours, knew that we were probably better than a lot of the other ones. Bill never liked it, but she was able to strong arm him enough. And I think there had been a big gap between number 4 and number 5, if I remember right. So
Yeah.
it was because of Michelle. She was trying to save it. And every single gourmet after 2 had done better in every single metric. Like we were clearly growing. We were one of the top repeating series, which is why 10, 15 years later, whatever it is, we're still airing reruns, right? Like not all of them are doing that. It's because gourmets repeat well. And then also for Muse, it was one of their best international sellers. We sold better than other Hallmark projects overseas because Hallmark does not sell well overseas. It's too puritanical for Europeans, but I guess something about the banter of the gourmet guy that does okay. And, I can get recognized in Europe even. It's funny, as Henry, of all the things that I've done, it's like Gourmet Detective, when I'm in Paris. So, yeah.
Do you think, because this was the last one, did you know it was the last one when you were going into it?
No, we never know. I mean, clearly they're all over now, but no, we were always like, oh, I guess we get to do one more. We'll see. It's sort of like Signed, Sealed, and Delivers were like for a while. I was like, okay, we got one more. Let's see what happens. Michelle Vickery got let go a little after that. And so our main defender was taken out. And then we were clearly no fans of Bill, Bill didn't really love us. And then it was shortly after that Bill left, was let go. And then it was the new regime. And that new regime never once reached out to us about anything. And it had been a number of years before we even sold something to them. Like I'd had a couple of things in development with them, which are not going forward now. As I said, I kind of had like a bit of a dust up and I just couldn't take it anymore. And it's too bad because one of them was a new murder mystery, a European-based murder mystery that I was quite proud of. And it could have been very, very good for the network. And if they had and we did actually have an exec at the network who, when she read the outline, she said, "This is so good. I can't believe this is so exciting. I have no notes for you." And you can imagine Becky and I just about passed out.
Especially
I'd
based on all your
never,
stories.
she had no notes. Like this was going to be the one. We looked at each other and went, "Oh my God, oh my God, maybe we can actually deliver what we set out to do." And then there was an exec change, and we had another script, and we had a bit of a falling out with that exec on notes. And then suddenly the other project was just dead. So I bet she didn't even read it, and I bet she just said, "Get these guys out of here, done." And I understand. I made it pretty clear I wasn't happy either.
Well, I'm wondering if Bill kind of at this point was just like done with you guys, because I think Henry is the most like how you've described Henry in this one of the whole series. And if at this point it's just like whatever, just I kind of silly because like the whole thing of Henry not knowing that the Giants are baseball and the whole sports thing, and he's kind of clueless, and he is
So I
listening
was
to his
raised.
classical music when he's doing his thing, right? And
Yeah,
the
right,
chef book, it's not a cookbook,
right. The
chef
chef
book,
book,
right? So
which
all
I
that,
always struggled with the chef book thing because it is a real thing. Chefs do have a chef book, and it's different than a recipe book. But this was in Peter King's book. I always struggled with this part of the story. I thought it was a little weak to hang a whole murder mystery on. So I did my best with it. I always felt we were a little daughtery on that one. So I would not blame people thinking, what? That's kind of lame. So I did my best with that. But again, I'm inheriting
right.
that storyline. Again, I wanted Pie in the Sky to be a little more case of the week. But I do think the Alfredo bit, Alfredo, the safety word was a funny
Yeah.
moment. Again, we got to see a little bit of the old Henry, right? And then the gun. I think I was experimenting a little bit. Hey, how silly can we make Henry again? Knowing that, as I mentioned last time, I'm not the strongest comic actor either. Like a better actor could have made Henry way, way better, at least in terms of funniness. And so I have to take a fair amount of blame that, if people don't love gourmets, maybe I'm not delivering as well as, like Kelsey Grammer. Kelsey Grammer is a major star he's a brilliant, brilliant actor in that role. I could never do Frasier as well as him, obviously. And so, maybe I have to take some of that blame. But Bill was already gone. But no, Bill was there for number 5. It was right after 5. Bill got fired. And, that was a tough situation for Bill, too. I mean, I can talk a little bit about that. Well, maybe I shouldn't. But that was a no-win situation for him. Yeah, I can't really blame Bill, actually, in that situation. That was a tough scenario he was put in.
So if you just look back at the whole Gourmet, we just went through all 5.
Yeah.
Like, what is the one good positive that you do take from the whole series? It sounds like just the cast.
The positive is I made really, really great friendships. Hallmark was very kind in letting me grow as a producer. And so as much as I bitch about how crazy it was, and it was really disheartening as a writer, I learned a lot. I learned there's room for me to grow as a writer-producer in the face of disappointment when you're getting notes, as every screenwriter is going to have forever. That's the Faustian bargain you make if you're going to go into this career. You're at the bottom of the totem pole. You're going to be shat on more than any other department because everyone's got an opinion about story, character, script, themes, you name it. And that's the good and the bad of our industry. You put 10 experienced directors in a room, and you're going to have 10 different visions of the exact same scene. You put 10 executives in a room, they're going to have 10 different opinions on how to develop a pilot, a movie, a scene, a character. You put 10 writers in the room, the same thing. So just because I feel very strongly about something doesn't actually mean I'm right. It doesn't. I've sometimes been proven wrong on this. I mean, obviously in life all the time. My wife will remind me of that 20 times, 2,000 times a day. And she is correct all of those times. As a writer, I can definitely be wrong, or it's just a matter of opinion. There is no right or wrong. It's just a different way to go. But the things that I battled, I feel very, very strongly, and I think I've got a good track record. If we were in a court of opinion here, I've got the receipts. There was a lot of insanity on those that did not ever help any script, and it definitely hurt them. And so I learned how to just grow with that. I needed some maturity and some experience. Becky had much more experience with this, being in a TV room. It's hard. It's hard for me when it's not just, oh, okay, that's a difference of opinion. I can see your point. I mean, I still agree with my point, but when you just tell me that you bought Frasier, but you won't let me do Frasier, well, then I have a problem, because it doesn't make any sense. And then, all those little details I'm talking about, you can't argue that, oh, well, that's just a different opinion. No, there's no sense or logic behind what you're doing. You're making this worse. So I I take away that they really let me grow as a producer, and for all of the good things and all of the bad things that happened on each one of those, production wise, for things that didn't work or things that maybe people like. It's not all on me, but I've got my hand in all of it, and so that's a wonderful thing to grow and learn with that. Hallmark was wonderful to me in that way. Not many actors are given so much freedom to exec produce and really do it. And Joel over at Muse was a fantastic partner because he gently gave me more responsibility with each movie. I was never like the production manager. I'm not going line item by line item with the sheets and pen and paper at the end of the day. I got a production manager for that. I would throw more responsibility with each movie, and it was actually really quite stressful and scary by the time I got to number 4 and 5, because number 4 was so off the rails. And we also lost our first AD in the second week of pre-production on either number 4 or number 5. No one will know this, but the first AD runs pre-production. The first AD is the captain, not the director. He's there to keep it moving, to set the schedule. The schedule is discovered, the shooting schedule, during pre-production. It's a very, very complicated, difficult job that takes years of experience, like years of experience. I could not do that right now, day one, easily on my own. And 3 weeks, we always have 3 weeks of pre-production. That is a sprint. That is all hands on deck, 24 hours a day. There are people, department heads working all over the clock, never sleeping. It's so hard. And when you lose your first AD and you have to start over with a new AD second weekend without a schedule done, that is bonkers. A lot of movies would have immediately not been able to finish pre-production. And so as the exec producer, it was getting scary. But that's the job, man. That's what I signed up for. Right. And so I'm thankful for that. I've learned so much over the years. I'm really thankful for it. As much as I bitch and I moan, and I definitely have PTSD from it, I'm really thankful at the same time. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Like I say, it was great going through the episodes. We're, going through and doing our own little reviews, what we like, what we didn't like. What we liked is a lot more. So, like I said, just judging by the fan reactions, all the input we get, it's so many people's favorite mystery that at the end of the day, I think you can feel a little better knowing the product.
Yeah, the product that's great. I'm just hard on myself. I'm one of those actors.
It is good.
Yeah.
So, but
thank you
very much, Dylan, for coming back. We love it, and just thank you always for just the conversations that we've had with you, whether they be on the podcast or just behind the scenes. So you've been always great to us.
Let me thank everyone watching too. I know there are some fans of Gourmet Detective, and they've been very vocal, and I'm really, really appreciative. So is Becky. And it means a lot that some people recognize what we were trying to do. We were trying, and it was a bit of an uphill battle. But thank you for all of the support. It means a lot, and I always hope the best for Hallmark. I hope they can turn it around if they're going through some struggles right now. I think they have a really powerful brand. I think it could do really, really good stuff. I think that they could grow their audience. I don't think they should ever talk down to their audience or treat them as being dumber than what they are. Family friendly does not need to be dumb. Adults do not need to act like children. Hallmark, do yourself a favor, get yourself a procedural. Find your castle. Okay? Find your castle. You need it. And it would do really well.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care, Eric.
Bye.